I had a home test to do, for STDs and stuff. And in that home test, there was a finger prick. I mean, I hate it so much, I procrastinated for 2 weeks.
Wow, okay. Almost like the more we try to circumnavigate it or avoid it or distract away from it, all that's doing is just creating more suffering.
Yeah.
This is In Therapy with Alex Howard, a first of its kind series that places you directly in the therapy room. My name is Alex Howard, and it is my hope that by bringing you on the journey with us, you too can learn the tools to transform your life. This series we're following Pierre, whose life is overshadowed by a sense of unworthiness and a fear of rejection. Pierre has come to In Therapy to overcome his childhood trauma and to realize his true self-worth. It's that kind of balance between being loving and gentle and supportive with yourself, but also being boundaried and just saying, you just need to do it. So I'm curious as to the impact or indeed the absence of that quality for you in childhood. What was your relationship with your dad like? Join us each week as we follow every step of Pierre's journey, both in and outside of the therapy room. As well as the tools I give Pierre in the sessions, I'll also be sharing weekly top tips so you can begin to unlock your true potential. This is In Therapy.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Pierre. How are you doing? Feels like a very long time since we've seen you.
Well, it has been.
I know. How long has it been? I was trying to work it out.
2 years.
2 years. Yeah, that sounds about right. It feels like that anyway. How have you been?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
Good.
How have things been more generally, just in terms of...
Yeah, a lot has happened.
Yeah?
Yeah, in terms of, I had quite a few big insights. So,
Interesting. Well, I'll let Alex delve into that a little bit more, although I'm very tempted to ask. But in terms of the work that we were kind of doing in the run-up to this session, specifically around sort of the imposter syndrome and also sort of feeling of being enough.
Yeah.
How has it been sort of sitting with some of that?
it's still a struggle, but even if it's there, but I feel like it's not as paralyzing as it used to be.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's just weird. And I think I shared already, that when the trailer was released and I shared it with people I knew, everybody was like, oh my God, you're so brave, you're so brave. And I was wondering, what's so brave, until I watched the first episode.
Well, this is something I wanted to ask. How has it been seeing the episodes now?
The first maybe 5 minutes, I cringed. I felt so much shame and so much, I don't know, I felt so self-conscious.
Okay.
And then I thought, that's what they're talking. That's what they've been talking about all along. And I was like, it is brave. Oh yeah.
It is incredibly brave.
Oh my God. And I was like, what have I done?
Oh no. How do you feel about it now?
I went from not sharing it or not talking about it to actually being proud of this work that is done, really, because after watching the first episode, when I went to bed, I felt so light.
Interesting. Well, I guess it's sort of saying, this is me. We all have our things that we're working through. Nobody's perfect, but this is me. This is my story, and that's okay.
Yeah. And even if it's not,
it doesn't matter.
Go back to your phone.
Go back to your phone.
In the first part of the session, Pierre and I catch up about his progress in recent weeks. One of his key revelations was that what happened to him in childhood wasn't his fault, and that there's nothing wrong with him.
And what is wrong with me is the fact that I was neglected, but not me.
Yeah, that wasn't about you.
Yeah.
It impacted you.
Yeah, exactly.
But it wasn't about you.
Yeah.
But I think also what you're speaking to is the kind of, is it a paradox, the reality, let's say, of this work, which is that it's not your fault that it happened, but it is your responsibility to do your healing, right? Because if the end point is it's not your fault, you're a victim and there's nothing that you can do about it. And although it may be true on one level, you are a victim of what happened. On the other hand, by making yourself responsible for doing your healing work, you're also empowering yourself for things to be able to change. Another insight Pierre had is that when something comes up that makes him uncomfortable or fearful, he procrastinates dealing with it, sometimes for weeks at a time. Can you give me a live example, like something in the last few days or weeks or whatever, where you saw this cycle actually playing out?
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't hard to find.
Well, which one? So I had a home test to do, for STDs and stuff like that. And in that home test, there was a finger prick. And I hate doing that. I'd rather go to the clinic and they take more blood, but
they do it for you.
I don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you have the gun thing that you do to get the pinprick? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I hate it so much, I procrastinated for 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
And then I thought, right, how old are you? Come on, let's just do it. Really. So that was a Sunday night. And I remember thinking, well, I can do all the affirmations I want. I can do anything I want. I'm going to have to prick my finger. And I thought, well, actually, that's a metaphor for life. Really, that I can't, I'm going to have to feel the needle going into my finger.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Nobody can do that for me. Really. And once again, it's such an obvious thing to say, but it had never hit me like that. Or, I never understood it at that level.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're describing is that there's the moment of suffering of something, then there's the suffering about the suffering, right?
Yeah.
So there's like the reality that like doing the finger prick like hurts. I had a wart on my finger, and so it's a bit graphic, but I had to have it cut and then frozen. They do the kind of freezing thing yesterday, and bloody hurts. I was there with one of my kids who was having something similar done. I was trying to pretend that I was. But what was interesting about it, I was just reflecting as you were talking, that having it done quite a few times over the years, it's like there's that moment which for a few minutes it hurts and it's uncomfortable. And that's the suffering. But then there's everything else that happens. And you can't change the suffering because that still hurts. But everything else is something we can do something about. And almost like the more we try to circumnavigate it or avoid it or distract away from it, all that's doing is just creating more suffering in a sense. Yeah. And it sounds like that was your recognition that you are making something which is a momentary suffering into a much bigger suffering by the way you were relating to it.
Yeah. And of course, I had to do it twice.
Life is not without a sense of humor.
So, and the other thing is, even those moments of hesitation, or when I confronted with uncertainty, which is at least 10 times a day, then there's always that sort of is the same. Well, maybe not the same, but it's very similar reaction where I sort of go up in my head and just try to think my way out of it.
Yeah.
Instead of just, it's actually, time saving to just do the action as quickly as possible.
Well, it strikes me that it's the same strategy that you deployed as a child, which may have been the best strategy at the time, deployed in a way as an adult which is actually not effective.
Exactly.
So as a child, you had these very painful emotions that you didn't have any other way to deal with. So going into fantasy or going into distraction was the best way you could deal with something that wasn't going to go away. The difference is here, inflicting momentary pain on yourself, is something that is over in a moment, but can last 2 weeks, for example, in terms of putting something off. And I think it goes back to this point around how you're relating to your body and how you're relating to your emotions, and whether it's that kind of balance between being loving and gentle and supportive with yourself, but also being boundaried with yourself and just saying, you just need to do it. And it sounds like because there's been an absence of the softness, there's also sometimes an absence of the action as well. I don't know if that resonates.
It does make sense, because I feel like I'm doing a lot of self-coaching or self-parenting, really, because I have the feeling that it's more the inner child that's scared.
Well, let me ask you a question we haven't explored so much before. We've talked a bit about your mum, and of course, these are as I'm about to talk about it, are quite old-fashioned, stereotypical ways of talking about these things. And I recognise it's much more nuanced than this. But historically, the mother quality was the nurturing and the softness and the "I adore you as you are, you're perfect as you are." And the more father quality was, "You got this, go for it, do it, you can make this happen," and the sort of can-do quality.
Yeah.
And of course, mother or father can give either, and mother or father can give both. Like it's not, there doesn't need to be that distinction, but we do need to learn both things.
Yeah.
That we are adored and perfect as we are, and we have the capacity to take action and do things and change. So I'm curious as to the impact, or indeed the absence of that quality for you in childhood.
Yeah, as you were talking, I remember. I just thought, well, I don't think I've ever got any of that either. But the adoring part, or the the sort of gentle push. I never had that. I never felt it.
Yes. What was your relationship with your dad like?
He was always working. I think he's a workaholic, really, really. And so he was always away, always.
And in that absence of your father as a child, how do you remember feeling in that absence? So there was something that wasn't there.
Yeah.
How do you remember feeling about that?
I really remember thinking, I wish there was a masculine figure in the house, so that that wasn't my brother, because I'm surrounded by women. It would be nice to see life through the eyes of a man as well.
Yeah. I wonder what not having the presence of that father quality, I wonder what you didn't get. What often we'll do in these situations is we'll go, well, it's just how it was. It didn't really impact me. But actually, the only reason we say that is because we have nothing to compare it against.
Yeah.
But actually, it doesn't have to be a father that does it. Of course, a mother or a grandparent or someone else can give us the quality. But one of the qualities that's really important in our development as children and into adults is the quality of a healthy boundary. And when I talk about a boundary, I mean our ability to say yes and no to other people and to ourselves. So it's more obvious to other people. You say, no, I don't want that, or yes, I want more of that. But it's also the same with ourselves. So going back to the example around ruminating about doing the pinprick blood test for weeks, it's that capacity to say, no, I'm going to do it now. And when we don't have that kind of internal boundary developed, often what can happen is we can go round and round and round on things and cause ourselves a lot of internal suffering, like the suffering about the suffering, because actually that there's a lack of that internal discipline somehow. And of course, for many people that have a father present, or they have more of that quality, they have often a different issue, which is that it's too rigid and too hard. And so their relationship with themselves becomes almost cruel and vicious, and they can get themselves to do stuff, but they're doing it in a way which is punishing in a sense. It's just like it's rare to have that love and safety needs met in an optimum way. It's the same with that boundary need being met in an optimum way. But of course, as you are realizing, the more awareness we have about it, the more we can recognize what's missing and then work to cultivate and work to develop that. Parenting is a tricky business, and doing it perfectly is impossible. Our parents can love us dearly, but not have the skills needed to meet our core emotional needs. But just because our parents couldn't meet our needs for us as children, it doesn't mean we can't learn to meet them for ourselves as adults. More on this in a bit.
So in my mind, or in my body also, it feels like I'm at the edge of a diving board that's like 10 meters high. Drama. and
I hear it.
And the more I wait, then it's like a movie where the shot widens. And then not only am I really high up, but then I can see the audience around, and then so I can feel the weight of people's attention. And that makes it even more even scarier.
You see, it's interesting. A lot of what we've been talking about, and a key piece of my work, is encouraging people and encouraging you to go deeper into their feelings and to look at the ways that we've learned to disconnect and to try and push around or push away from how we feel. Because a lot of the time, what we really need is to be more emotionally in contact. But it's also true that sometimes that's the most unhelpful thing we can do, because it actually causes more paralysis where we are. And sometimes what we need to do is to stop and to take action, and not in a way that's self-punitive or a way your inner critic shaming you, but just a sense of awareness and clarity that the path of least pain is actually the path of taking action in that moment.
Yeah, definitely. And but what helps me anyway is recognizing those situations and think, oh right, okay, I know. Now, yes, I'm still afraid, but I know why. And it's not because I'm wrong or because I'm broken or this. Let's just do something.
Well, it's like the recognition that courage isn't the absence of being afraid. By definition of requiring courage, there is a certain amount of fear that's there. But it's the ability to take one step, keep taking steps forward, despite the fact that you feel afraid.
So I mean, that's quite new, really. But that's why it feels. I hope that's why it feels difficult. And the more I do it, the less. Well, I don't know if it's the less difficult, but at least it won't feel new anymore.
One of the things that I think would help would be to work on growing the awareness of when you're in these stuck places. What are the warning signs? Like, what are the clues that you're kind of overthinking or you're avoiding? Like, how do you know that's happening? Like, what happens in your mind, in your body? Like, what are the warning signs?
I guess it's about distracting myself.
Okay.
For example, picking up my phone or see if I have an important email I will avoid anyway. But, you know, it's,
But at least you're distracted for a moment.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it happens so quickly
Yeah.
that, you know, it's only when I've done it that, oh shit, I've done it.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you need is a way that when you recognize that happening, you can actually stop.
Yeah.
And you can redirect your focus
Yeah.
in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because one way to think about it is from the point of view of neuroplasticity, like the way that our brains work, is we condition responses.
Yeah.
Right? It sounds like you're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You do A to B enough times and it becomes a wired pathway, and then it becomes automatic and unconscious.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what you're wanting to do is to break those automatic cycles and instead condition something which is proactive.
Yeah. So how I coach myself, well, it's not automatic yet, of course, but it works every time. When I actually visualize myself physically rewiring my brain, then I thought, okay, right. So by doing something instead of thinking, that will help rewiring the brain.
Yeah, because you can't think your way to feeling different. You have to move your way and feel your way to feeling different.
Exactly.
There's a technique that I've given you access to the reset program. So there's a technique in module 4, which I think would be really helpful to watch between now and next time. Not just watch, but to watch and to work with between now and next time, called the stop process, which is a way of recognizing that we're running a pattern to be able to stop it and to be able to redirect our focus. I think that would really help you in what we're talking about here. So that's part of the homework, but just to back up for a little bit, I think part of this as well is taking a capacity that you do have and just applying it in a new way. Like, it sounds like when it comes to daily habits and routines, you're remarkably consistent in ways that some people really struggle with. Like, you've got a real ability to follow through and to do that. But it sounds like it's where you can trip yourself up is the kind of internal reflection and ruminating and going round and round in your head, that breaking out of that cycle and moving to action, I think, is a really important piece. Because if we go back to what we talked about the last few sessions, we talked about imposter syndrome and then this sense of feeling like you're enough. What we don't want is to set it up where your sense of inherent value is tied to what you do and what you achieve. That needs to be unhooked from that and to be separate from that. But equally, self-respect or a sense of inner pride is something that we somewhat earn. And we earn it through action, you know, and it's not about that true sense of self-worth is not about achieving things that culturally it's said we should achieve or other people think. Like, I don't think we really do that by money and fame or success, whatever that narrative is. But it's down to having a sense of pride of knowing that when we've had difficult decisions or different moments, our orienting principles have been followed. Like, the things, if I think about the things in my life that I'm most proud of, they're not the things that people that know me from a distance probably think I would be proud of. They're actually the much simpler things and the more personal relationship-based things, and the times where I've done things that were personally quite inconvenient, but they were the right thing to do. In that's what gives me a sense of pride, not going, oh, I've achieved this and done that or whatever it may be. It's a much more private and a much more personal thing in a sense. And I think that does come from that ability to take action and to go, this feels difficult, but I'm going to do it anyway. And sort of then getting to know yourself as someone that has courage to do things that feel challenging and feel difficult. Pierre has learned that when things become uncomfortable, procrastination is the safest response. The problem is that what might have been a necessary survival strategy for Pierre as a child is causing him to be stuck in his life as an adult. And as we all do, Pierre has trained his mind to have a conditioned response. And to retrain that means rewiring his brain to respond differently. If you want to learn more about neuroplasticity and how we condition and train habits in our mind, do check out a free 3-part video series which introduces the foundations of my Reset program. You can find the videos for free at reset.alexhoward.com. I feel like the next chapter of your work is a diligent putting into practice of some subtle things that you've seen that I think are really important.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge of the next chapter is because they're quite subtle in the way that these things show up and you're really normalized to those things showing up, it's relatively easy just to let things drift as they are. And so it takes self-discipline. It takes a certain amount of courage to work to change this. But the potential reward of changing it is enormous, right? Because it's your ultimate capacity to fully show up in your life. And I think a lot of us, we might have a bit of an overestimation of what we can do in the short term, but we also massively underestimate what our potential is over the medium to long term.
Yeah.
And the biggest limiting factor in your business right now is you. And I mean that in a respectful way.
No, I know.
And I think you know that to be true as well, because one of the hardest things to get with any kind of business is product market fit, like to have a product that people want and a product that people are engaged with and interested in. And what I understand, you've got that. And so getting if it's investment or support, whatever it is, putting yourself out there, putting it out there, taking well-calculated risks in terms of growing your profile and what you're doing, that takes your courage and your willingness to work on these patterns and these pieces that show up. And if you change, I think all of that will reflect that change.
That's the conclusion I got to as well. And I actually launched my podcast last week.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How has that felt?
Well, very uncomfortable, obviously. But also, I really thought that, without this, there would never be any podcast.
Because?
Well, because I thought...
You got used to having a microphone shoved in front of you each week.
Well, yeah, but also if I can talk about myself, really, in those circumstances, then what's the podcast compared to this? Nothing.
Yeah, this is about as vulnerable as it gets.
Yeah.
So it feels like there is a growing awareness of the moment to moment, day to day, in terms of the suffering about the suffering and the unnecessary going round and round on things, this recognition of this sort of absence in childhood of this loving, encouraging parent figure saying, you can do this, you've got this. And the recognition that the more you give that to you, the more you unlock your own potential.
Yeah.
And the more that you're able, in many ways, your business is a reflection of you. And so the more you grow and the more courageous you are and the more action you take, the more that then rewards that within you, which is potentially quite exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I still have to sort of come out of the, everybody does it better, or, I don't know what I'm doing, everybody else does. I have to I still have to work on that. But it's not paralyzing me anymore.
Yeah, and that, goes back to what we talked about a few sessions ago with imposter syndrome, that sometimes imposter syndrome is a set of beliefs and habits that we need to change. And other times it's a grain of truth in it, and we need to go out and get the knowledge and the experience. Like one way of thinking about it is there are a bunch of people that know more than you do about certain things, but that isn't the issue. The issue is, can you learn it? And the only way you learn it is by doing it. Like the only way you're going to get good at podcasting is by doing podcasting.
Yeah.
And the more that you do it and the more you constantly refine and you learn and you improve, you get better and better. Hopefully you get better and better and better at doing it.
Yeah.
But if the belief is that you can't do it and everyone's better in the first place, you're never going to take that action to move you closer towards that destination.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Thinking about improving is not going to improve.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, and that's really the paralysis of the trauma is the result of it is inaction. And the impact of inaction is things don't move and things don't change. The more action you take, as long as it's well thought out and it's sort of sensible action, even if you don't get what you want, you get more information that gets you closer to what it is that you want.
Yeah.
So I think the module 4 in the reset program, I think will really help. It'll give you a much more practical strategy and like an actual tool that when you recognize this happening, that you can actually learn to stop and to shift your state in response to it. So I think that will really help. And I think it's just really working on your awareness around this. Because I think there's a lot for you to be very excited about in the future. And the way that you unlock that is by letting yourself live your potential.
Yeah.
Which means getting your inner critic out of the way and not wasting energy procrastinating, but actually turning it into action and into moving forwards. All right. Well, you're welcome. I'm excited to hear what happens in the next few weeks. I feel like this is quite a potentially pivotal moment for you in terms of movement. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can't think your way to a different habit. You have to condition your way to a different habit. And the way you do this is by interrupting the old pattern consistently and training a new response. In doing so, you are literally conditioning your neural pathways into a new way of being. Changing patterns we've been practicing for decades is not easy, but absolutely possible with diligence and patience. And this is a key part of Pierre's work in the coming months, to really embed in his habits the changes he's already feeling in his mind and heart. It takes discipline and focus, but change is absolutely possible for all of us. Continue to follow Pierre's journey as we release weekly episodes of his sessions with me. You can watch here on YouTube or listen to the episodes as a podcast. And to help support you in coming on the journey with us, I've created some materials to accompany the series. Each week, there is a bonus video with me and a worksheet to bring the session to life for you. In this week's reflections, we will be exploring habits you want to change and how you'd like things to be different. You can find these resources for free at intherapy.alexhoward.com. Here's what's coming up next week. Well, here we are. Last session.
Especially for non-white people, there's a real stigma around psychotherapy.
If everything that you feel and you're focused towards now was to come to fruition in a realistic way in the next 12 months, who would be sat here with me?